The den reeked of iron, smoke, and old death. Even the air trembled. No one had ever entered the War-Beast's lair and lived long enough to tell the tale. But that night, a human woman did. She walked through the ash and bones carrying something small, something alive. A hatchling no bigger than her hands chirped softly in her arms. And when the War-Beast, the galaxy's most feared predator, turned its gaze on her, it didn't roar, it bowed. If that opening made your heart skip a beat, you're in the right place. This is one of those rare humans are different stories that shows why no other species can quite understand us. So if you love gripping HFY sci-fi tales about courage, compassion, and impossible respect, hit like, subscribe, and share this story with someone who believes humanity still has a spark worth bowing to. They called it Xyrr's Maw, a wound in the planet's surface so deep that sunlight barely touched its stone teeth. From orbit, it looked like a scar, a reminder of the war that had ended 1,000 species. No one went near it. Not soldiers, not scavengers, not even the automated drones dared to enter. Because inside lived the War-Beast, a creature that had ended fleets, silenced empires, and once ripped through a dreadnought with its bare claws. Entire galactic sectors used its image as a warning, donned to provoke what breathes beneath the ash. But then, something unexpected happened. A distress signal. Human in origin. A small exploration vessel went down near the Maw's edge, its last transmission garbled but clear enough to spread panic. "Someone's alive! They're heading into the den!" The alien news grids laughed first, then they went silent. Because even mentioning entry into Xyrr's territory was suicide, let alone walking in. Yet one human did, alone. No armor, no weapon. Just a figure in a torn flight suit carrying something glowing faintly blue against her chest. And for the first time in centuries, the War-Beast stirred. Yuna's boots sank into the dust of a world that hated life. The air shimmered with heat. The ground split with old scars of war. Every step echoed like a whisper to something ancient. And listening. She could have run. She should have. But when she'd found the wreckage of the crashed pod, something had moved inside. Something small. A hatchling. Scales soft like wet glass. Pulse faint. Eyes not yet open. It had cried. Not in words, but in that universal sound every living thing knows. Fear. And she, a human engineer with no training for this kind of madness, had done the only thing her species was known for across the stars. She cared. She wrapped the little creature in her jacket, whispered to it softly as it trembled, and set her path toward the coordinates she'd sworn never to go near, the den of its mother. Behind her, the wreck still burned. Ahead, the horizon bled red where the Maw waited. Each step, the hatchling's heartbeat pressed against her chest. Small, fragile, real. And somewhere far below, a deeper heartbeat answered. The path into Xyrr's Maw was carved from fear itself. Bones, bleached and massive, littered the canyon floor. Remains of ships, beasts, and civilizations that had once believed themselves unstoppable. The air shimmered with static, humming with echoes of old battles. Yuna walked through it all, clutching the hatchling close, her breath fogged in the cold air that seeped from the cavern ahead. Every instinct screamed to turn back, to survive another day. But humans, they never listened to fear when compassion spoke louder. She saw etchings along the walls, massive claw marks, each one deep enough to slice steel. And yet she didn't see madness there. She saw grief, old, lingering grief. The deeper she went, the more the silence pressed in, heavy and alive. Her flashlight flickered, then died. The only glow came from the hatchling's soft blue light, pulsing like a heartbeat against her chest. Then the ground trembled. A shadow moved, and with a sound like mountains waking, the War-Beast emerged from the dark, eyes burning gold, each breath shaking the cavern. Yuna froze. The hatchling whimpered, and the war-beast stopped. For a heartbeat, the galaxy held its breath. The war-beast towered above her, a living mountain of muscle and light, its armor-like scales reflecting the faint glow of its child. Every alien across known space would have expected the same ending, the human crushed, devoured, erased. But instead, the creature hesitated. It leaned closer, nostrils flaring, the heat of its breath rolling over Yuna like fire. Her knees trembled, but she didn't move. She simply unzipped her jacket and lifted the hatchling forward, hands shaking but steady. The tiny creature chirped, weak, hopeful. And then something impossible happened. The war-beast's roar never came. It lowered its head, a sound like thunder softening into wind. Its massive form trembled, eyes flicking from its child to the human who had carried it through fire and death. Slowly, impossibly, the great head dipped. Not in aggression, not in threat, but in respect. For the first time in its long, bloody reign, the war-beast bowed. Yuna didn't understand. But across the stars, sensors captured the moment, and millions watched in silence as the monster of legend knelt before a fragile human who had chosen mercy over fear. The war-beast stayed bowed, motionless except for the trembling rise and fall of its breath. Yuna stood before it, heart pounding so loudly she could barely hear the hatchling's tiny chirps. Then, with a slow, resonant growl, the creature reached behind its neck, claws scraping against armor-hard scales, and pulled free something gleaming. A crown. Not of gold, but of bone and starlight, carved from the remains of fallen kings it had slain. It placed the crown before her feet, not in surrender, but in recognition. To the war-beast, power was earned through dominance. To a human, it was earned through empathy. And in that fragile space between them, something ancient broke. The old rule that only strength commands respect. When Yuna reached out and touched the crown, the cavern walls lit with living light. Across the galaxy, observers recorded what they called the bowing of Xyrr. Armies paused. Fleets turned back. And for the first time in 1,000 years, the war-beasts no longer hunted. They guarded, because one human had entered their den not to conquer, but to return life. And from that day forward, the stars had a new name for humanity, the kind who returned life.